Alrighty, so we've been diving with the humpbacks for 3 days straight now. They're still playing and jumping out of the water all through the beach here. But today we got the day off and I'm going to be doing my first podcast on foreign soil, Passion Inquiry, with none other than Mark Tilley. Some people in the freediving and kind of ocean world might have come across this guy. He's got a pretty wicked Instagram handle. And I've just been hanging out with him as my whale guide for the last few days and really picked up on, oh, there's a dog and a few cows along this beach. Hey puppy. Really picked up on amazing energy, to be honest. And I don't say this lightly, but the guy's coming on 40 and has just such a passion for what he's doing and a willingness to share that with everyone. The kind of two words that I would sum him up with, at least came to my mind, was just infinitely grateful. You know, I think the quote to me that comes to my mind is a lot of people die at 25 and aren't buried till 75. And at least the way, from my little narrow perspective of experience with this guy, I don't think he's died yet, you know? And hopefully he won't get buried for a very long time. So I'm super keen to sit down with him and just hear his story and let him share it with me and anyone on the other side of this camera. And just get everything, all the juice out of there, you know? Because guy's never done a podcast. For me, I'm pretty nervous because it's the first podcast I've done with, or at least been on the interviewer side, as with a stranger. I only met him a few days ago, and he's also the first one that's not in their 20s. So I think it'll be a really cool experience for the both of us, and I can't wait. So yeah, I mean, bloody hell, what a setting to do it in. There's cows on the beach, there's dogs over here, there's whales jumping out of the water. I mean, look at the waves crashing on the reef. I mean, it doesn't really get much better than this, ladies and gentlemen. So, super keen, and we'll hear from Mark shortly. Hammock, beer. We found a little nook, Mark and I. He's setting up comfortable. I'm gonna play around setting up the camera. Good to go, man. Whew. Got my extended notes here. Okay, down there. Oh, you got your notes as well. Nice. All right, episode 3 of Passion and Inquiry. See you right up there, man.
There you go.
Yeah, I was saying to the camera earlier, I'm a bit nervous because you're the first guest I've had that hasn't been my friend for years and years.
Okay,
just met.
Sure.
You're also my first guest who's not in their 20s. So, you know, and I don't say you're old, I say it's like, oh, this is an actual adult who's been an adult for more than, 5 years, which,
I don't feel like one.
Well, that's, yeah, I was saying this to the camera as well, like, I was doing some research, I was scrolling through, this sounds creepy, but I was scrolling through your entire Instagram this morning for about an hour, just kind of really trying to get a a grip on, again, we've only known each other for a few days, so I have a very narrow image of who you are. And
Sure.
I'm sure the Instagram perception for all of us is very different to the reality, right?
Yeah, that tends to be.
But at
Absolutely.
least it gives some context.
Yeah.
Or at least what you're doing, what you're wanting to show to the world. The one thing that through that and your captions, but also what I've seen from you face to face, person to person, is infectiously grateful. And I don't know if that
I appreciate
strikes
that.
a bell
Thank
to
you.
you, but
Yeah, I definitely haven't lost my enthusiasm for what I love to do, or particularly for the ocean. You know, it's something that's like fueled my travels and definitely fuels my kind of vibe for life. If I'm around the water and doing the things that sort of light the fire underneath me, that definitely is. It's kind of it's definitely what's been the driving force in my life for sure, and it's taken me quite a few places around the world as well. So
for sure,
yeah,
it definitely feels like that is the one theme. And I've asked, my friends who are, again, a few years into adulthood, what their kind of theme of their life is, and it's starting to gain a bit of a picture, 5-6 years in, but maybe not as rock solid as yours. Is just love the ocean. Would I be correct to say?
Yeah, absolutely. I think at all stages of your life, there's obviously like you sort of change path, you change direction, but there typically will be a theme that like draws you towards it. And for me, it has definitely always been being, on, in, and under the water in many different guises. I think particularly as I've got into sort of my most recent set of years, your mindset changes a little bit. So, you're less sort of reckless abandon and like fuck it, because you just like you're slightly more cautious, but you've also had the experience of probably some shit not going quite so well in life to sort of draw on. So you still go after the opportunities, but you can see it with a bit of a different set of glasses, if you know what I mean. So I've become a little bit more, what's the word?
Risk averse?
No, I wouldn't even say risk averse, but like cutthroat with my decision making. So like if something's not what I want, I'm not going to bother kind of like carrying on with it. I made some pretty brutal decisions last year here in Tonga when I was working for one place initially, and I changed, and now I'm working down here south on Awa Island, and it was like one of the best decisions I've ever made in my life.
Right.
Because it's just completely flipped opportunities and sort of what's the word? Maybe stability of a role here.
So to put that into context, would it be the case that maybe a version of you 10 years ago would have been like, oh my God, I'm free diving with humpback whales all day. This is brilliant. And whatever bullshit on the side of that, I'll deal with it. Where now it's like, I'll actually sacrifice that if it comes down to it, to not deal with the bullshit.
To a degree, yeah, absolutely. I think particularly once you get into, like, I mean, I've been on the water approaching 20 years now, and you get to a point where you feel like actually, like I'm valuable to your company. And if you don't see that, I'll go somewhere else. I'm not. I've sort of my bullshit, but the old bullshitometer is quite sensitive these days.
Cool.
And so it's honestly like it's such a kind of cliched phrase that you'll hear maybe your parents or lots of older people say that like life is too short, but genuinely it really is. Like you spend way too much time in your 20s and even your early 30s like kind of caring about people that don't really give a shit about you, what they think or how they perceive you. And as you get older, it's so easy just to be like fuck off, basically. And just kind of, it's not being selfish. There's a difference between being selfish and putting yourself first. And I think that's what I've become a little bit more sort of smart in terms of how I'm trying to sort of spend my time. Is like, you'll see some people are robbing your energy, your affection in some cases when it comes down to like romantic relationships, without really giving anything back towards you. And so, yeah, once you've had sort of some often quite crappy experiences, you learn from them. That's the kind of weird juxtapose of life, I guess. Sometimes you have to go through some shit to be able to make the best of a situation in the future. And I feel like a lot of those experiences are now really kind of paying off with the position I found myself in, particularly right at the moment. So, yeah, man.
That actually leads me to a question I was kind of thinking I'd ask quite at the end of the piece, but I think now's a perfect time. Like, a lot of people that are living from the get-go a bit of a compromised existence, at least in their day job. You know, not everyone's probably dreaming as a kid to become an accountant or something.
Sure.
So they might come to a realization of standing up for themselves and realizing their value quite early in the piece, maybe 5-10 years into that. Would you say it's a fair statement that, like, finding that a bit maybe later, because along the way, yes, there's been the same level of bullshit, but there's been so much amazing stuff to counterbalance that?
Absolutely. I think there's very much so, like, when something is kind of like refilling your cup on a regular basis, like intrinsically, like for your soul more than anything else, it's quite easy to ignore the nonsense at times, and sort of like, I think particularly when I was younger, you know, like you drown it out with, you know, partying and boozing and drugs and stuff, and but like it kind of becomes a bit louder as you get older, and you're just like, it's not even necessary. I think that's more than anything. So drama becomes something that you actively avoid more and more as you get older. It's just like, I would much rather stay in on like a weekend and have like a nice meal and nice glass of wine and watch a movie than go out and, you know, get smashed up at a bar or something and feel like shit the next day. So that's definitely one. But I think in terms of in work, I've always felt a little bit of almost like guilt loyalty sometimes to jobs, when you're like, I don't really want to be here, but they're in so much trouble if I leave. You're like, they don't care. They'll find a way to work. It's a business, you know, like, and they're not looking out for you. So, you know, you don't have to do it in like some savage way, but like look out for yourself and really like, if you find people that appreciate how valuable you are early on, like stick with them, whether that's friends or work or romantic relationships or something, because it's like, that's where you'll get your sort of most out of situations, because you feel better basically in them. You know, you're not like stepping on eggshells wondering if like you should really be there, or, you know, people kind of disrespecting you basically. So yeah man.
And what along the path, but especially at the start, however you want to perceive the start, what expectations did you have of life? And like, how have they formulated and changed? And
I guess like some people seem to have a very clear plan. They know the field they want to work in, they know exactly what they want to do, how they're going to do it, and they seem to get it at a young age. Like, you seem like quite a driven person, and I am driven, but maybe in a different sort of way. I still feel at the age of 39 that I'm not entirely sure what it is I want to do. Like, if there's no job role, I guess, or like official job title. And I think as I was younger, really coming out of university and stuff and starting to move around the world.
yeah, perfect.
I just really wanted to go and explore and sort of see what was out there. And I've managed to do that, but I had no idea the sort of breadth and spread of different like job roles, job titles, skills that you learn and pick up on your travels and working around the world that it would get to. You know, like, it's quite weird because you don't really see the things building up because you're constantly doing them, but when you sort of start writing them down, like I write a CV now and I'm like, oh, actually I've done a fair few things. You know, or like been in the water for a long time, and there's definitely like no substitute for experience, but when it comes to being on boats or diving, you just have to do it for a long period of time to really gain that kind of like sort of second nature element to it, and often get out in some pretty gnarly conditions, see some sort of gnarly experiences, stuff goes wrong, emergency situations, to really like learn some very valuable lessons. And I think it's Rudyard Kipling, if you can keep your head about you and all around are losing theirs, you know, and it's like, that's a very, very true thing, like in all things, but particularly in the sea, because stuff seems to go wrong pretty badly pretty quickly. And so you need to be quite aware.
It's a very visceral kind of manifestation of Mother Nature. And it's one we haven't evolved to operate well in either.
Well enough, absolutely. It's still we're very slow to react. We can't move particularly effectively. So, you know, like I'd say pride, but I'm conscious of like trying to stay in good shape when I'm working in the water, because You know, like it's when you, in some cases, having to like tow people around, move them out of the way of whales.
Yep. Yeah.
You're climbing in and out of boats all the time. We have a physical job with a very, very long season here, and it's like if you're like people drinking, smoking, eating badly, not doing any exercise, like they suffer. And at the age I'm at, I'm in better shape at 39 than I was at 29.
I mean, you look
so it's like,
yeah.
but like feel physically better, you know. So that's actually probably more important. If you feel good within your own body, then you're doing something right.
Can we get into some of those stories of
Yeah.
like, when shit hits the fan?
Okay.
There must be one that hits that comes to your head. Dramatize it, you know.
Okay, so we just had some absolutely pretty pouring rain here yesterday in Tonga, but like heavy rain, heavy squalls, like often the wind speed can change, go from being, I don't know, say 10, 15 knots, it'll pick up into the 20s. The rain's driving sideways, visibility's down. We had a missing diver in East End off the back of the, like, we'd had 2 groups diving.
Is this here?
No, East End Grand Cayman, in the Caribbean. So yeah, group drops down, 7 divers. I collect my 7 divers, get to the wall. Just as I'm sort of starting my thing, like my mate bangs on his tank and looks at me, and he's holding up 6 fingers. He should have had 7 divers, and he's like, 1, like, where are they? And I was like, you look around, you see any bubbles anywhere? I was like, no idea. And I was just like, yeah. So like, he was a very good diver. I'd been diving a few years. He was more experienced than I was. So we immediately, like, everyone back on board the boat, initiate diver recall. You're searching for bubbles, but the visibility's terrible. Like, it's getting really, really rough. Pan a medical emergency to the Coast Guard. You call all the other dive boats in the area. Like, at this stage, you're on board. You make sure you have everyone, like.
And what's the timeline of this, real quick?
Probably 15 minutes.
Yeah.
From the time when
he said that underwater.
Yeah, like, is anybody there to like, everyone's back on board, and effectively, like, the search has been initiated. You haven't found someone within probably 10 to 15 minutes. It's kind of more of a recovery than it is.
Really? But surely they can come up on their own, you know?
Yeah, but it's like anything. Like, just because someone's certified to scuba, you don't know that they're necessarily going to fall. That they could have had a heart attack. There's so many things that could have happened. The guy surfaced having dropped down to something crazy like 58 meters on air because he wasn't paying attention to his computer. And we're all just in pieces at the surface. That one was pretty savage, but it was one of those things where you realise.
Do you get him straight to the decompression?
No, he wasn't bent. He just was. Yeah, he didn't die with us again after that because our bosses were like, "No, you can go somewhere else. You're not really pretty reckless." That was definitely one that was kind of like where you realise in the briefing, like you can stop problems from happening by being a bit more prepared. In lots of cases in life, but definitely then. I've only ever had to do CPR on one human being who unfortunately didn't make it. That was in the Cayman Islands. He wasn't on my boat. Massive guy from Texas. Sort of we stepped off our boat on the dock, walked over, and then there's a guy doing an attempt at CPR on a dude on the back of his boat, and we immediately were like, he needs attention. So like, run back, grab the O2 kit. Everybody runs down. Chest compressions, like, it's weird if anyone's done CPR on like one of those dolls and you feel it like click in the chest. When you do it on a real human being, the first compression you feel the ribs crunch
because they break, right?
Yeah. If you depress the sternum enough, like 2.5 to 3 inches, you break ribs. That's just quite a weird sensation to go through. And then obviously you've got like people around you, like the family members of this dude who unfortunately passed away, and like it was quite a hectic.
So you're touching him as he's
essentially like blue in the lips, and like, you know, he's pretty lifeless. And we just carried on CPR until the fire services arrived, get them off the boat onto a stretcher into an ambulance. So that was definitely one.
Have you ever like explored that? Were you straight to work the next day? Have you kind of sat with that? We chatted,
all the crew we chatted with as well. We chatted to the guy's family afterwards a little bit, but it wasn't like it's weird when you get in those situations. It's quite strange. Like I sort of said about that quote, but like for example, where we're sitting right now, one of our colleagues got stung by a lionfish the other day pretty badly in the leg, and we came around here and he was like collapsed. And I was like, what's going on? And I saw the lionfish and was like, I kind of know exactly what's happened here. But your sort of brain goes into this weird autopilot of like identifying the problem, identifying like, okay, what do we need to do? Like, what's the most important thing? You know, I don't know. Say for example, your boat's sinking. What do we need to do? Try and block the hole to stop the water from coming in. That's the primary thing. And then what's like, you get on the radio, you do this, like sort of delegate out to people to use other tasks.
Everything becomes extremely logical.
It does, because you have to just like lock it down, and like really you need to take your emotion out the window. Now, I haven't had a situation that was involving, I don't know, say for example, like a sibling or a family member or a partner or something. So, but yeah, it's weird when you've done it a fair few times. Like people have medical emergencies, they're short of breath, they're breathing on O2, or they might get bent. I've had a few people, divers, have had to take to the chamber as well and stuff. So that can get quite intense. But the more you do it, the more comfortable you get with it, I guess. Like if you've ever seen a freediver black out, the first time people see that, they are like usually quite terrified. And if you've seen it a few times in competitions or various other places, like you have to stay calm with it as well. You know, give that person advice and stuff afterwards. But yeah, exposure to stuff that at first might be terrifying, later on becomes like, all right, let's deal with the situation. You should ask any like paramedic or EMT about that. So the exact same thing. First few times they're responding to like a gnarly car accident or something, it would be pretty insane, but you just sort of like learn to lock your brain down.
Cool. And the water's always been the context for which you, in a sense, develop yourself in any arena, but this one's an obvious one, right? With guiding people and
sure.
I noticed that for a bit there at least, you were into depth. Like depth freediving.
Sure.
That chapter, I think, for anyone listening who knows you, is probably like a freediver, and definitely I think it's an awesome context to unravel and really figure that sort of stuff out. How do I be extremely present and logical when I've got an apartment story building above me, right? Like, what was that journey with depth? What was the attraction? Is it still there? Has it dissipated and moved into other things? Like,
good. That's a very good question, dude. It's a section of my life that I'm, I guess, also extremely proud of, but I miss a lot at the moment. When you're deep diving, you have to be in a place where you can consistently get out to water that is going to allow you to safely and responsibly like progress your depth. If you don't have that there all the time, it starts to drop away. It's like someone who like works out in the gym. You've got to be going there like constantly and putting the work in to get the reward as well. But I guess with freediving, like I was always like quite an active person. I played a lot of sport when I was younger, but I never really truly excelled at anything. You know, I was always very good like swimmer and stuff, but not like wasn't like a speed merchant, you know, like competing for like racing or anything. But when I started snorkeling and scuba diving, I found that like I could maybe hold my breath a little bit longer than other people and comfortably dive deeper than them without having training. And as I progressed, I did a course in 2013 in Florida with a guy called Martin Stepanek, who's a former world record holder, world champion.
Cool.
Learned a lot from those guys, yeah. But I sort of started to kind of like roll through the gears and realizing actually like not only am I enjoying this, but I'm starting to get to a level where I'm kind of competing with some of the deeper divers from my country. So I think I haven't checked in a while now, because it's been about 5 years since I was like doing depth regularly. But I was within the top 10 in the UK for like the depth disciplines.
It's getting kind of hectic now and very popular, but back 5-10 years ago, it was still so niche that you know, those numbers were a big deal. Like, everyone was a bit of a cowboy, right?
Yeah, and the amount of people diving over 100 meters now is really incredible, and that's no easy feat. But through education and coaching and better equipment, you know, like better facilities in areas, it's definitely become a lot more attainable. And I would really like at some point to try to get to that magic number. But I'm also well aware, having got a lot of friends who've been there, that it requires a lot of dedication and like living in an area where that's
a few
feasible.
years of 6 months pool, 6 months depth, like kind of something
yeah,
like that, you know?
Yeah, for sure. Like at the very least, like full winters away from perhaps like seasonal work here in Tonga, where you know, that's your sole focus. But for me, it was like it was quite a cathartic process, because it was a physical test. There was a mental test, which was, for me, was the hardest bit, initially at least, like sort of surrendering to the depth, because your initial urge in lots of things is to kind of fight it. It gets a bit harder, and you stiffen up and tense up, and as soon as you let go, that's when you get the progression. You relax and let go, and it's the weirdest thing. It's such a sort of like hefty contrast, where you've probably got an elevated adrenaline level to a certain degree. You're physically exerting yourself, but you're trying to keep your heart rate and your sort of metabolism, mental state as slow and as like, you know, like calm as possible. So
you're saying my sales pitch for freediving courses word for word, yeah.
But yeah, so a lot of people love freediving for that. If they work in corporate jobs and stuff, like it forces them to slow down. So I found after, like, when I was living in the Cayman Islands, we could swim 5 minutes offshore and be in 1,000 meters of water. It was an excellent place to do it. And like going through the gears there, like part-time fitting in around work, you know, I sort of progressed into the 60s in like end of 2013 into 2014, and then slowly made my way up towards the 70s, and then kind of plateaued, because we had some good divers in the island, but we were all around that sort of like 70-75 meter mark, and then we had a couple of people. One was a former world record holder, a lady called Ashley Chapman from Evolve Freediving, and her husband Ren, good friends of mine. And they stayed with us stayed on the island, should I say, from April until the end of June in 2019.
Yeah.
And they were really pushing our training, giving us lots of tips, and that's when we really progressed again. And so
they're based in Kona, right?
No, they're based in North Carolina in the States.
Okay, yeah.
There's another Evolve Freediving that make equipment, yeah.
Because you've gone to Kona, I've seen it.
Yeah, that place is incredible. So, but they were kind of like gently pushing us along, and that's when I broke into the 80 meters, and felt very comfortable doing it, but just was like everybody has some sort of obstacle to overcome in freediving, and for me it was management of my air at that depth, it's equalization. Physically, conditioning wise, I felt very fresh completing dives over 80, no problems with hypoxia or anything, but I was just like, if I can keep my mouth filled and manage it down there, I know I've got more left in the tank. And that's what excites me in a way about the future, if I dedicate some time to it, because freediving's a long game, and if you're patient, you can still reap the rewards like much later on in life.
Was 62 and bombing it down to 100. I'm like, okay.
Yeah, exactly. It's really a very cool sport for that. You know, you don't have that impact on your body, in your joints, in your muscles and stuff as well. And central nervous system can take a hit. That's why you got to be very careful with your rest when you're training.
Okay.
But
is there signs of dementia and stuff like this?
No, not so much. Short term, in that you'll just be exhausted.
Yeah.
All right, bud. You have to be careful with that. Like one thing I definitely was guilty of when I was younger was overtraining and diving too much trying to get the results, when you realise actually allowing your body to recover is probably going to get you there just as fast. So.
Cool. So would you say that, because I again, this is from your Instagram, so this is, but it seemed as if there was this period of depth, and then that energy perhaps transitioned into photography.
Yeah, to a point, absolutely. I think that's very succinct of you. There was definitely still a lot of energy in depth, but the camera became something that was a huge outlet. I think maybe more just creatively for me that I wasn't really aware of to start with, because I bought myself a camera for my 30th birthday. That was like my present to myself.
Yeah, A600.
Yeah, Sony A6000 in a Nordicam housing. I got it in the States. And then, yeah, it just kind of went from there, because I was like, oh, this is fun, and sort of started gaining a little bit of traction. This is back when Instagram was actually a photo app rather than a video app.
Right, because I'm looking at this, it's like 2015 it kind of started going.
When I bought it, yeah.
I'm like, yeah, that is when Instagram was like...
Yeah, it was purely pictures, you know, like there was no stories, there was no reels, it was just posts, and and it functioned like, I think that's why I gained a lot of traction in it, because I never made videos, I never really shot video, but like from ones where there's a lot of very, very good freediving photographers out there, even more so nowadays. It used to be much less common that people were shooting on breath hold, at least at the numbers of people that are doing it. And I've only ever shot pictures on as a freediver. I've never ever used my camera on scuba. So it was interesting, but we always just try to get stuff that was like really unique.
Yep.
Like in anything, you need to make yourself, what's your USP? Like,
yeah.
How do you stand out? How do you stand out from the crowd? You know, and like you can take an excellent picture, but if it's basically just the same shot or with a slight difference in the same dive site, like I see some pictures and I'm like, excellently composed, great lighting, you know, beautiful focus. I'm like, it's this dive at Sharks Cove on the North Shore of Oahu, and there's a dude holding a chick, and you're like, hang on, let me just use those hashtags, and it's like, oh, like there's hundreds of them. Yeah, so like trying to, now I guess like imitation is a very sincere form of flattery. If people are trying to kind of copy other things because they like it, is one thing, but sort of strive out to be your own person, own photographer. I was always just trying to find stuff that was like, people were going, what the fuck, or like, how did you do that? I don't understand. That was what was driving me at the time. But because I also could like finish work, grab my camera, run and shore dive, and I was living there, it made it very easy. I was, you know, shooting probably 3 to 5 times a week.
Cool.
So I was constantly had stuff to post from new things or old stuff, and yeah, I guess like I had a lot of energy for depth and things, depth and photography and things were going. And then 2019 into 2020, like a lot of people, a lot of things changed there. I had a dive accident. I was scuba diving with my little brother, which I'd barely done for about 4 or 5 years, and I ended up having a seizure. Yeah, which kind of changed.
On the surface, or?
Yeah, about 4 hours after diving, like grand mal seizure collapse with like, they think it was like a bubble in my bloodstream.
Yeah.
So that was a hefty blow to the finances and also mentally, I think, really. Yeah. So I moved away from the Cayman Islands. I had to reset my immigration status there anyway, and I was sort of sailed through Guatemala, Belize with a friend of mine's dad.
Is that, I saw an Atlantic crossing somewhere on the mix.
That was 2016.
Okay,
yeah.
That was earlier.
Yeah, that was dope as well. That was quite gnarly. That was good. But then, like 2020 hit. I was in Mexico when the lockdown happened, and I went back to England thinking I'd be in there for like 6 months, and it ended up being like 2.5 years.
We might save that for a bit, because I still have a few more questions about photography. Like, how is it kind of splitting the energy of depth and photography? Were there ever dreams of kind of making it to a certain degree in either one, but the energy was split, or was it just like, I like these both things, I'm doing these both things, I'm happy to work part-time? Like,
yeah, I think because of the way I was working in the Cayman Islands, like we were always busy, which didn't give me as much spare time as I wanted. Probably something that was driving me to think about changing my way I was working there, I guess, a little bit. But everything was, at the time, it was based purely on kind of like enjoyment. I never went into either one of them thinking I'm going to become a full-time photographer or a full-time like depth diver. Yeah. They just slowly started progressing, like, you know, like in their own rights. And typically as well, when you go somewhere to maybe go and do depth, or you go somewhere to take pictures of marine life and stuff, there's opportunities for both. Right, yeah. So they were sort of ticking over. I think when I started to plateau in my depth, I did a lot more photography, because that was as a creative outlet was massively important for me, I guess. I was really enjoying that. I was still enjoying depth, but because you're not making that progress, you sort of get a little bit, what's the word? Stagnant. But I found as well that I wasn't really targeting it enough, you know, like where you go and employ a coach or someone really at a level much greater than you. If you want to dive 80 meters, you need to be talking to people who are diving like 100, 110 meters, because that's like a bread and butter dive to them, you know. That's like something they can do consistently.
Because they need to get you to 90, not just show you how to do 80. Or
exactly. So
and I was looking, and I just had a nice actual moment. I felt very connected with your story actually this morning, because a lot of the photography, maybe your unique selling point, had a lot to do with bubble rings. Right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
that definitely seemed to be your thing. Saw photos I've never seen before. The girl walking on the bubble rings, the way the bubble rings were. And if you haven't, I mean, check out, what is it, Mr. _ Tilley?
Yeah, underscore Mr. _ Tilley, because some
There you
bastard
go.
had the one without the underscore first.
Oh,
So.
dog. But there was one in particular, which had like a bubble ring horizontal, and then like bubble rings were also vertical, and the kind of the bubble rings, I have no idea. I've never seen anything like that. The reason I felt so connected was because you saw a bubble ring from a humpback whale the other day when I was in the water with you. And like, that's obviously a sick thing, and I didn't see it with you, but you were like, that's awesome. But reading that whole 10 years of bubble ring photography, and you had bubbles out of the humpback whale, like, now I just need to see, like, you've been manifesting that for a long time, it
Yeah, I'd seen a video of one doing it in, looked like waters where they were actually like up in, probably in the Northern Atlantic, where they're doing like bubble netting, and a bubble ring is different from a bubble net. But yeah, I got shown how to make bubble rings on scuba gear, you know, and then I just used to do them all the time and love doing them. And then you kind of get muscle memory to do it, learn how to do them as a freediver, and then they can be quite crazy when you're taking pictures. And yeah, like you said, at that time when I was shooting a lot of pictures, doing a lot of photography, they became quite maybe something I guess I was known for, in regards, like someone was like, you know, if you'd asked other freediving photographers, someone was like, oh, good bubble ring photo, they'd probably be like, fuck, that guy's got some sick ones, you know. Whereas someone was like, oh, who's got good shark photos? And I'm like, oh, James Ferrara, Reef Hunter. Like, I know them off the top of my head, because they're the ones you kind of like admire. And
You're the bubble ring dude.
yeah, to a degree. Like, there's a lot of people who do them very, very well, but sometimes capturing them in that way is different. And I got lucky, but I have actually written a bubble ring course to teach people how to do them. Because there's actually, well, kind of, I've got it, like, is it actually, I'll maybe show you it whilst you're here. But
I'm a you know, pretty intermediate, you know, pretty not great.
It's the consistency, but I don't even know how many I've ever done. It's like, it's a lot. It's
hundreds of thousands, perhaps.
Yeah, probably, like anything, you know. Repetition is the key to success. What's Bruce Lee's comment? I fear not the man who has practiced 10,000 kicks once, who has practiced one kick 10,000 times.
That's it. That's it.
So yeah, they are a source of joy for me. And when you see how people react to them, people who've never seen a bubble ring, when you blow one on the water, they go crazy. You've got kids on like charters. We used to have families snorkeling in the Caribbean. Like, kids think you're some sort of like wizard, like, because you just pop up like a chain of them or something. They're diving through them or anything, and they like absolutely love it. But yeah, to see a humpback whale pop one out of the blowhole, I was going nuts. Because
I kind of felt, thinking back to it, I kind of felt bad, because I'm like, we're just some strangers and, you know, some just dickheads that are coming along, and you have to show around and have a good time, and hopefully they have a good time with you, and maybe they don't. But you're like, this is it, you know, and you kind of...
I immediately messaged my mate who taught me how to do bubble rings in the Caribbean, and was like, bro, like, you never guess what. I was like, fucking humpback whale bubble ring.
Yeah.
He was like, no way. So yeah, it was super cool, and like, it was a clean one. I have a rule: no shit bubble rings.
Yeah.
If it's not perfect, it gets smashed.
Sure, perfect. Okay, there you go. That's a standard.
Yeah.
So, where is this photography and stuff sit in your life now?
That's a very good question.
Because I noticed you around not with a GoPro or a camera.
Yeah. So,
I just don't want it to sit on the throat, you know. I don't know if it fucks it up. Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah. So I think it's definitely slowed down. It's taken a back seat, and I almost feel a bit sad / guilty about that in a way. But when you're guiding out here, you can't swim around with a big rig camera. It's just freaking impossible. Like, it would be almost, actually, in a way as well, like, pretty irresponsible to dive with a rig that big if you have a group of people, because sometimes you need to get people out of the way fast.
Yeah.
You know, not everyone is as aware or maneuverable in the water.
I mean, that baby whale was about to swim into me, and I was kind of hoping for someone to pull me back. You know?
Yeah, yeah. It's just
like, how do I
grab a weight belt? You know, just to give people maybe an extra like couple of feet, a meter or something.
Yeah.
And you need your hands free. So I have a cool little rig with a GoPro on it, but which I've been taking out, and I think sometimes once the groups have kind of settled, or you get like a really good group of whales, I'm going to jump back in with it. I've captured some cool stuff already this year, but I'm a bit lazy when it comes to like editing and
Because if it's not that exciting creative pursuit as it once was, it's hard to.
Yeah, sometimes, and as well, like I'm aware that when I get in the water with my camera, I'm like my whole mindset is different. You know, like you're looking for an opportunity, whereas I need to be paying attention to what's happened to 4 people in the water. So that's one thing. The other one as well is like it's momentum, I think I would call it. When I was like shooting pictures all the time, I was like kind of quite driven on the fact that you're posting and like you get cool responses, and it's not just about oh, how many likes did I get. It's like literally, which seems like the way the world's driven now, but it's more like when you were getting really cool comments from people you admire as photographers or divers, and they're like, that's sick, or like, I know how hard that is, or you take a shot at depth and they're like, you know, where did you shoot that? And you're like, oh, that was shot like the deepest I've ever taken a picture with my camera is like 34 meters, which when you're swimming a big rig up is pretty deep, but you also like can capture something that's just like
not many people see.
Gorgeous. Yeah. So it's like, yeah, exactly. And so you often see people that like realize, they're like, oh wow, like, and I've been to that dive site, so I know like where you are, and that's
34 minutes. Where was this? Was this the Cenotes?
North Shore of Grand Cayman. Yeah, a dive site called Babylon on the Pinnacle. Shooting.
Saw a lot of work with like Pepe.
Yeah.
He loves it as well. Like.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Mexican champion. A lot of stuff in the cenotes there. So just go to places that like inspire you. But I think so. I didn't do enough with my camera over the winter when I was in Indonesia. Often because I was trying to go for depth. It sort of drives your focus one way or the other.
That's what I'm saying, yeah.
But I know I'll always have my camera. I'll always use it, and I find sometimes in life that takes you in different directions and brings you back to something for whatever reason it might be. But yeah, COVID definitely derailed my momentum, and I didn't take pictures at one point for nearly a year.
Yeah.
Didn't dive for 6 months at one stage, which is why I got pretty fucking depressed.
Well,
so.
Perfect segue, because it definitely seems like I think many people, including myself in a big way, will relate to some COVID life-altering things. What's the story? What happened?
Yeah, so as I said, I'd had that dive accident in the Cayman Islands, and I was leaving to reset my immigration status. So end of 2019, stuff was actually looking quite sweet. Sailing through the Caribbean on my mate's dad's catamaran. Spent some time in Belize. We sailed into Mexico. In Mexico, then I was diving the cenotes like early 2020, and you sort of start to hear wind of all this thing that's going on from like, you know, China, and then it's into sort of Korea, and it's like, okay, and then it hopped across to Italy, and then Italy was going crazy. It was in Spain, and it was like, wow, that sounds a bit mad. And then all of a sudden, like, it's in the UK, and it's kind of spreading across the globe, and you're like, this is pretty weird. That's never really happened
and
before.
You were on a sailboat in the Caribbean?
No, at this stage I was in Playa del Carmen, so I was diving the cenotes in Mexico, doing some stuff with pictures for like the guests of a friend of mine who had like a freediving sort of set up there, and it got to the stage it was like, oh, this is really getting out of hand. And then they started announcing like, oh, countries are locking down borders, and it was like, whoa, this is like, no one really knew what was going to go on then. So I didn't know. I was thinking, okay, I'm going to lock down for a month, a few weeks, and then I stayed in Mexico. I found an apartment that was going super cheap for like $350 US for like a month.
Yeah.
Decent apartment, and I was like, I'll just hang tight. It's pretty cheap cost of living here. And I had basically until about June of that year that I could have gone back to the Cayman Islands after resetting my immigration status, and I was like, I can hang out.
So
there.
You couldn't be in the Cayman until June of 2020?
Yeah, effectively, because I had to do a full year away from working there. So I was in Mexico in this little apartment, and then they like, oh, you can't go to the cenotes. Oh, you can't use anybody else's pool. You can't go in the sea. So then I was in this little apartment block, like by myself.
In Playa?
Yeah, not going a bit loopy.
A bit of a gross place for that as well.
Drinking too much, just like, I think like a lot of the world. And And I was like, man, this is pointless. Like, nothing's going on. And I was just like, I'm just going to go back to England because we still had open borders for like UK residents. So I got back into the UK in May of 2020, thinking I might be there, yeah, over the summer or something. We had a really nice summer that year, so actually it wasn't that bad. I was paddleboarding on the river and stuff, but really missing me.
Whereabouts in the UK?
A town called Reading, about an hour west of London, on the River Thames. So yeah, it was like there, and I was thinking, okay, and then like got a job that summer with a landscaper, physical job. That was actually quite fun. Starts getting towards October, the weather started getting shit. It was like, what the fuck? And then December's coming around, and I was like, okay, we're gonna be here for Christmas. And then Omicron came in. I think it was Omicron or the Delta variant or whatever, right? Anyway, so like massive lockdown in the winter. 3.5 months of that winter, we were in lockdown, and you know, I was in the room I grew up in as a teenager. Just like, whoa, like that's when like it hit me like a bit of a ton of bricks actually.
In the winters, yeah.
Yeah, it was not good at all. So some tough times actually of those couple of years in England. That summer of 2021 was rough. I was really depressed, and I kind of snapped myself out of it. I did a big road trip up to Scotland, sleeping in my car and just being a little feral human being. It was fantastic. And that reset me quite a lot, but also like made me realize like you need to get out and like get back in the wild, you know, like sort of what fires you up, whether or not you're sort of diving in the same way, at least be outdoors and doing like just, you know, being nature basically. So I kind of set about a bit of a plan. Then I was like, I've got to change a few things here, and I was hoping it was going to be that winter, but I was looking to maybe go over towards Australia and New Zealand, and they were still shut. The Cayman Islands were still shut, and I was like, I'm sort of thinking, am I going to try and hop somewhere, and it being like just to get out of England, and it didn't really feel right. And then I sort of got sucked into another winter. I got to Christmas and I was like, I'm bailing. There's no way. And I went to Egypt in January of 2022 for like 3.5 months to kind of just get out of the worst.
I missed you by about a month.
Oh yeah.
I think I have like May, I think.
Oh yeah, you did then, yeah. So I got out there, which was really good, and that was actually when I employed a coach for my freediving and got back to like into the 70s and felt amazing with it as well. Was like, okay, this is cool. Tried to kind of come back to do some stuff for the British summer, to almost like, basically the idea was to sort my shit out and then think about leaving in the autumn. And the plans I'd laid to do some diving with a company down in the southwest sort of got steamrolled.
So like Cornwall?
Yeah, in Cornwall. There's quite a few actually now doing spearfishing, freediving stuff, but yeah, that it sort of sunk my headspace down a little bit again, and it was weird. You go into these little sort of like retreating into sort of protective mechanisms, I guess. So I was like, fuck it. Went back to the town where I was initially, came back into, and was like, I just got a job and just worked my ass off for like 5 months, working like a tent job, putting up massive tents for festivals and weddings and stuff. Crazy hours, fucked my body up, but like worked my butt off, I said, for 5 months. And then October 2022, I flew to Australia. Cool. And that's when stuff sort of slowly started coming back towards more like the life that I want to be living, you know.
So Ron, not to be annoying, I just, you click this on your shirt, just pinch there, so perfect. I think that'll be better. Oh,
okay.
The mark's just there, so that side. Let's cut this a little bit out. Thanks, bro.
No worries, dude. Got to Australia, and I helped build a dive centre in Agnes Water, 1770. For someone that I'd met in Mexico, and we'd been chatting throughout the whole of the lockdown period. Literally, that was 2020. So this is end of 2022, 2.5 years about this. And I got there thinking, okay, cool. Like, you know, I sold my car, sold a bunch of stuff in England. I was like, I'm leaving regardless. Like, I'm just going to get out of there. Get to Australia, spent 2 months basically building this dive centre. When I arrived, it was
scuba,
it was a scuba centre, but with spearfishing and stuff as well. Building like stuff from like framed timber buildings, like wrapping them all. We like boarded everything, painted everything, like ribbon cutting ceremony. And 2 days after the ribbon cutting ceremony, I got told to leave the accommodation I was staying at the dive centre there's no job for you here, like just get out. It was like the weirdest.
By this guy that
a chick, actually, a chick.
by this girl that you've been talking to for 2 years.
Yeah, like in some dark times for both of us during COVID and stuff. So it's a very odd situation, and that left me feeling pretty flat, having kind of like feeling like it was a new start.
Real quick, and this is, you know, potentially a bit too like personal, but what's the context for that? Was it literally blindside? Was there a relationship involved in it?
Biggest blindside I have ever had in my life.
Were you just mates, or was it intimate stuff, or was it?
They would no, like we'd snogged a few times and stuff when we were in Mexico, but nothing like. I never ever led into it saying, you know, like I'm coming here for you. I was like, I'm coming to Australia. Like,
did she maybe want that to be the case?
I don't know. Maybe so. I'm not really too sure.
Was there another guy that was like threatening like that? Because that seems crazy.
Yeah, it was. So that was December. So I still made loads of mates in this town, and like I stuck around over like Christmas, New Year, and then January I went up to Indonesia.
And literally, like the ribbon ceremony, you're like, "We're sweet. This is going."
Wearing uniform, like part of the.
And there's no inkling, subconscious feeling.
Nothing. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
No, it was very, very odd. Yeah, completely. So, and all the staff were like it was very, very weird. And then I went up to Indonesia in January, spent 3 months in Indo, and by the time I got back down into Aussie, because at that stage I'd sort of set up something in Tonga, I got back in, and like everyone working with the dive centre had been screwed over. All the tradies had been like refused to be paid or taken to court, or you know, for like, oh, you haven't completed work you said. So it turned out basically that she was just a massive cunt.
Right.
And had screwed everybody over. And now I saw some friends from there just before coming to Tonga this year, like in May. None of the staff that were working there when I was there are there anymore. Everybody quit.
Yeah.
She wasn't paying superannuation to like 4 of her staff, so the taxer and tax officers on her, and there's a whole bunch of other stuff. She had government contracts to provide data on the dive sites or on research sites that she hasn't been doing. So she's probably going to have that revoked and taken to court. And I guess from our perspective as people who were there, were just like, well, karma's a bitch. And so yeah, it was weird, but in the same way as well, if I hadn't come to Australia, that got me out of the whole of England. If I hadn't gone there, I wouldn't have probably gone up to Indo. If I hadn't gone to Indo, I wouldn't have met a lot of people that feels like quite a safe base to go to in the winter. But then also as well,
are we talking? Or?
Yeah. But then if I hadn't, if I'd stayed in Australia, I wouldn't have ended up coming to Tonga.
Yeah.
So like, life's weird. I was sort of saying in an earlier section where we, you know, like things you learn from that then drive you and you can kind of draw on. Unfortunately, it feels like the last few years there's been a lot of experiences to draw from, which is a bit harsh, but
you've been a bit thrown around.
Yeah, definitely thrown around by life, but you become quite adaptable and resilient to it. And like I was saying about becoming a bit more cutthroat, I try to hang on to stuff for too long, and sometimes now you just go, cool, like there's no point. If someone's made a decision to be, well, to treat you like that, you're like, I don't want anything to do with it.
I had a really good quote that kind of goes on that. It's, if someone shows you who they are, listen.
Yeah.
Because usually they tell you who they are and you kind of want them to be someone different or this and that. It's just accept it.
You're like, okay, cool. See ya.
Yeah. This leads to, and this might be a tough question.
Sure.
I don't know how this will be perceived, but let's say that this experience that we're living right now, and there's a retreat here and whale trips going out. Now, there's the owner, Rob, who obviously has heaps of experience in this world and has kind of set up this experience. And there's plenty of pros and cons to that role. There's, I guess, the employee, which is you, who probably has, I guess, more flexibility and more fun. But, you know, if this went to shit, this might not be a job for you, so to speak. And then there's the client who is living some potentially bullshit corporate life and pays $6,000 to be here, right? Have you ever felt like that employee status, I should maybe be the owner or maybe the client? Has that ever been a question for you? Because for instance, with the dive school, if you're okay, I'm going to create my own dive school, maybe it doesn't work, but at least no one can blindside me. Or maybe I work as a labourer and then freediving and photography can be my like side hobby and it doesn't rely on anything, you know?
Yeah, no, that's a very, very good point. I think so. When I came down here to AWA last year, the reason I got a job here, there was an Aussie guy who I was on the whale guide course with, who I was chatting to when things were going a bit weird up north. I'm pretty good at that. A shit magnet, it felt like. So I was in touch with him, and he was like, "You should come down here." And I started chatting to Rob, and no holds barred. Initially, he offered me a temporary opportunity with no pay, which I politely turned down because I said, with all due respect, I'm not coming to work for free for anybody ever again in my life. I've done it as a youngster, like too much for experience. And he sort of, I think maybe because I stood up for myself, he was like, "Oh, okay." And the one thing I just said to him, I was like, I know I can work well with your organization. Like, I've been on the water for too long. I know I can. I was like, but don't bullshit me. I'll put that as the number one thing. I was like, don't bullshit me. Don't screw me over. I was like, because it's happened too much recently. If you don't have an opportunity, don't give me one.
Yeah.
But like, I don't want to deal with any shit.
Don't try to get me for 4 months and string me along. Just to,
nothing, man. I said I'm over it. So over it. Like after like the last few years, particularly. And he was like, "Oh, okay, that's fair." And so last year when I came in, I was sort of arriving probably halfway through the season. Just over halfway through. Oh no, just under halfway through the season. And then I guided for the rest, adding in a few bits and pieces, and became quite useful. And got asked if I wanted to come back this year, and I immediately knew I did. But I didn't really know, obviously, quite what role it is. There's been a bit of a shift around in staff, and so this year there was going to be like a step up in role, but it's been a massive shift in role. And I guess I've picked up a lot of skills along my past, and makes me kind of laugh a little bit now. Even in some weird situations in the UK, I learned a lot from those ones that weren't ideal, but have become quite useful here. And so I feel like I've become quite valuable. I'd like to think to the point where I wouldn't get screwed over. I try to keep myself, I try to always believe that the best is possible in people. It's been quite hard to do that in the most recent years because I've seen the worst of people at times as well. But you have my trust and respect until you lose it, basically. But all I've seen since I've been working with Rob has been a very, very straightforward down the line. Like, he doesn't want bullshit, I don't want bullshit. There hasn't been any, and it's working.
He's the most true blue Aussie legend I've ever met. Yeah. To be honest.
It's a firm but fair, you know. Sometimes it's tough calls and stuff that goes on, but like Rob's seen more stuff in his dive career than I could possibly hope to, and like the opportunities that I'm afforded here, both in the water, through travel, like I was doing that filming up north earlier this year as well, through spearfishing, through his contacts, are really incredible. And I think I'm also quite aware of that's a massive additional kind of like bonus to being involved here that I'm sure is going to kind of continue to pay dividends for me in the next few years. So.
For sure. Yeah. And on these last few years being kind of put through the ringer to a certain degree, but still coming out the other side optimistic, hopeful, not nihilistic and cynical. You know, through no shortage of your own, but also other people's, like, you know, goodwill. Like, as I said at the start, you seem like, I was infectiously grateful. Out on the boat, I said, like, obviously you got that social energy and battery. By the nature of being a guide, you have to create the vibe. Because sometimes you'll get legends like me on your boat who are good fun, right? but often they'll just be bots. You know, there'll be NPC characters, right? But like your ability to access that stoke. I think I wrote this on your little thing, and not just have it for yourself, but actually be willing to share that with complete strangers.
Sure.
Like, have you got any tips for people? I actually said this before. Like, there's another quote that you might have come across that most people die at 25 and aren't buried till 75. And it feels like you haven't died and you're almost 40.
Yeah.
And hopefully you won't get buried anytime soon either. So keeping that almost, and I don't mean this in any derogatory meaning, like almost boyish nature. Like that. Like, any tips for that? And especially to be able to have the endurance over not just years, but over the season, in the Tonga season, like.
I'd say like it's important to always try to keep in mind the feelings you had when you did things like that for the first time. Like I can remember them so clearly. I have a weird memory. You've probably heard me talking a lot of like Latin names of like marine species and stuff, and like stuff sticks in my head. That can sometimes be
Greek, by the way.
Yeah,
And then the other ones, right?
Yeah. So that can be good and bad, because you kind of, some of the shit stuff stays quite fresh as well. But like, remember that like just absolute kind of like awe you have when you first see, like, you know, like I remember first seeing a tiger shark or first seeing a manta ray, just being absolutely frothing my guts out. And you have to remember that, like, when you've seen these animals, they're never going to get old. It's incredible to swim with whales all the time, but like, you have to remember that feeling, you know, and like you're trying to kind of like lift the level so when they get it, they're even higher, you know, like, like it's, they do half the work for you, you know, like you can't help to see people get like excited when all the stuff's going on, but definitely like you want to stoke it. You want people to leave feeling like it's basically like under promise and over deliver.
Yeah.
But also as well, genuine things. If you're faking it, it's obvious, you know, like you probably see me, like when I get excited because something's going on, like I am that excited. I'm like, oh. Yeah. And I think that comes from like a true passion for it, you know, like I've been interested in the natural world since I was like a little kid. So to be able to be out there doing it for your job it's kind of like, it feels a bit of a joke, really. Like, this is crazy, like I said. So that's one, is if you have a passion, follow that. Like, I've never really followed like money, maybe a little bit too much when I was in the Cayman Islands, because it became a comfortable lifestyle which allowed me to dive and things the way I wanted to. But really I feel much more aligned to like my true self in a place like this, where you know, like, yeah, I'll finish whale swim, come back, dump my stuff off, go out for a spearfish. Like,
every day. Been
mugged off by whales in like 6 meters of water spearfishing after work, laughing to myself. I've got a fish on the end of a spear and there's whales swimming past. I'm just like,
yeah.
So yeah, I'd say that's definitely one. But also being aware of your own energy levels. There's some times where you can continue to push. If you feel tired, go to bed. Like, you know, get your rest. Like, I had a long lie-in on a Sunday morning. It's like the best thing, because you just feel rejuvenated afterwards. That's definitely one as well. But try to kind of listen to your body. Sometimes your body's like, I just need to eat. Like, I'm really, really hungry. Like, what do you want? Like, it's like a craving protein, or it's craving carbs, or sometimes it's like, I want some chocolate, or I want some ice cream. Like, then eat it. We burn a lot of calories doing this job, so we're quite lucky that. And I think I'm quite lucky, like with my sort of family genetics, that I've got quite a high metabolism. It's definitely slowed down as I'm getting like slightly older, but if I'm active and working out, I stay in good shape. But I quite like feeling like that, like you're ready to go at all times. So yeah, take care of your body, take care of your mind. If you need to, on a Sunday like this afternoon, I'm 100% going to put my headphones on and go on a long ass walk down the beach and have some sort of like quiet time when no one else is around. That definitely recharges your battery. Also, one of the reasons why I go out to like spearfish or things after work is because like it keeps me topped up. Because you have a responsibility. Like, if you choose to do a job like this, you can't be someone with the personality of a tea towel. It's like you have to have a level of energy. Like, that's why, you know, you'll find people who have that vibe and that sort of infectious spirit maybe doing these sort of jobs, because it's like it's part of the
But again,
package.
after 6 months of it full time, it can be, from my own personal experience, like freedive instructor full time, it's like it is sometimes hard to carve out those spaces to do whatever fills your battery, to set those boundaries of giving yourself rest.
For sure. Sometimes it's important to recognize when you just need a true break as well. When it's like, okay, I don't need a day off, I need like a few weeks off. Probably in a different environment, maybe with different people. Sometimes things like last year before Christmas, I was in Indonesia and I wasn't really sure what I was going to do. Was I sticking around and I just sort of fairly last minute booked a flight home to see my family, and I came back to Indonesia in the new year. Was like, that's what I needed, like just a refill of a cup on a level that you're not necessarily aware of, you know, like a bit of a reset and stuff. So it's just, yeah, try to be aware of what your body or your mind is asking for, is definitely one. And then, yeah, genuine passion. If you're doing something that you love, it's very clear and obvious, you know. And I hope that comes across to people who share the water with me. So
I think from my own perspective, absolutely it does. And I think that quote of dying at 25, like,
yeah,
that's
like
just
that.
about like letting your dreams die, really, isn't it?
My mate from back home called my hometown a graveyard of ambition.
Wow. Yeah, I think a lot of people resonate with that, especially from the UK. You know, the UK seems to be a hot spot for, you know, and I think that British culture, the nature of that tall poppy syndrome, it's just like if you're out there being an individual, following your own ambitions, like UK and a lot of that filters into Australian culture as well.
Yeah,
there is
100%. There's a lot of similarities.
Interestingly, is becoming more Americanized and more like entrepreneurship and all this stuff, but I think it's very strong in the UK still. I guess like living that dream life, which we've discussed how it kind of has come, are there hidden costs? Like, what would they be?
That's a very good question, and 100%. Anybody who thinks because you're out doing this sort of stuff, it's like always easy, or you know, it's you know, picture postcard lifestyle the whole time, is they're living in a fantasy. The costs are, there's a few levels to it. One, you're sort of sacrificing sometimes stability. For example, my 6 months in Tonga this year I've felt the most stable I've felt in a long time, which should probably tell you something. We're in like a tiny little village on a tiny little island in the middle of the South Pacific. It's very, very weird. But I think for me is like events and family more than anything else, because you're a long way. Like I'm literally 10,000 miles away from home right now. I'm on the other side of the planet.
It's a long swim.
Yeah, for sure. You know, like my parents are getting older. I've got 3 nephews and a niece who's due in about 3 weeks' time.
Yeah.
Changing them in a year is like absolutely insane, you know, the amount of birthdays, weddings, graduations I've missed, sort of is huge. And there's a lot of times there's a bit of guilt for that, but in a way, but that's always fairly typically self-imposed, you know, like it's a guilt that you create in yourself. Because if you ask any of your family members or your friends, they're like, man, like you're like, you went after like what you wanted to do, and like you're now getting to do it. It's like there's not enough people, I think, that do that. But the cost is high. There's a mental cost. There's definitely, from mine, like I'm 39 years old. I'm single. You know, dated a few girls here and there, like in the Cayman Islands, and I was seeing a chick recently from Australia, but it's not a stable life that like leads itself to being in a place where those sort of things like flourish and develop, because you're constantly moving around, and also as well, like, and I come to realize this sort of reason why my most recent thing sort of ended is that like I like this lifestyle.
Yeah.
There's parts of it that's hard, but there's part of it that like I sort of crave without really realizing that, like the excitement of the new spots and moving around and constantly going to places that people like, they're like, oh, I'd love to go there, and you're like, I fucking lived there for 6 months. Or it's, you have to sort of break it down into like the simplicity of it, and you're going like, okay, I can't have one or the other. Like if for example, being back in the UK during COVID, I had a lot of time with my family, which was excellent, and I feel like it was in some ways much needed, particularly with my parents, and getting to see like my nephews born and stuff. But I was a miserable, depressed little human being, you know. Like for me, I was not myself. I was operating at a level that I couldn't achieve what I'm capable of, you know. And it's quite specialized, like niche, like lifestyle, but like you've also created that lifestyle. And so if you spent 10 years learning to become a good diver, like drive boats with guests in the water with marine life, or you know, like that's also like, that is your life, and to be deprived of that like stops you from being like yourself. So you know, finding the balance is there. I think one thing that's good is trying to carve out a niche where you can live that, but then also at least get home. Like I'm trying to make it at least once a year to see the family, really. So
the family's probably the top priority now. Like, I guess how Rob's doing it currently, of like, well, he's doing a very similar thing day to day to you, but because he's settled in this, or he's kind of committed to living the dream, but only one dream. Like, you can technically have access to thousands of dreams because you can do a season here, a season there, where he's like living the dream, but it's one dream, and that stability allows him to have a little family and all this stuff. Like, is that on the radar for you?
I don't know.
Or is it just the novelty of having access to all these dreams, season here, like?
Well, I think more than anything is like, nothing is ever like off the cards. I just don't think I've found the card yet, you know.
One that's
like,
worth it, yeah.
Nothing, not even that's worth it. I just haven't found something that like, I trust in my gut instinct more than ever nowadays, like really more than ever. I've never been more aware of like, does this feel right? You know, am I like, wow, like I'm getting my teeth sunk in here. Like here at Blue Water Retreat here in Awa and Tonga, like I feel like it's developing into something that I'm going to be around in for a few years, and I haven't felt that for a long time, and it's actually a really nice feeling in some ways. But there's also a point where I'd like to think, okay, what else is developing? You know, could I get involved where I literally know where I'm going to from like the winter season effectively, or the summer season in the South Pacific, winter in Europe, you know, Northern Hemisphere. So you could be like, right, I've got whale season, a month off, or like 3 weeks off, Christmas at home with the family, and then you're flying into somewhere in the Caribbean, and you do 4 months there, then you have a month off, and then you go somewhere else. And like, to find that, is it like, it's odd, but it would become routine, and then
someone else could technically, feasibly join in on that routine.
Yeah, maybe, you know, you never know how it works. For example, I love being an uncle. Being an uncle is fucking epic. Like, love it. There's like the paternal instinct. You care for them. You want to see them do well. You want to teach them things. But I know deep down in my heart that like, if it's a line in the sand, as soon as you have kids, your life changes because it's all about them. And that might sound selfish, but I would say it's more self first. Is like, I want to continue to live the life I want to live. So being an uncle is great because I get that kind of like element of it without having the true responsibility of like it being all the time.
I think the truly selfish thing is to get wrapped up in social pressures or in a relationship that demands, and anything that demands and pressures something like having kids. And then if you're still wanting to live selfishly, like in a sense, like do your own dreams and stuff, well then the kids are the ones who suffer for that.
Yeah, sure.
If you might live the next however long, it might be you never have kids, right? But as long as, if you ever made that decision, you're ready to, okay, this is all going to be for them now. Like, yeah,
for sure.
Seems like a lot better arrangement, right?
Yeah, definitely, absolutely. So there's I guess a few things on that end, but I'm like, for example, like I'm super stoked to be able to think about when I could take all my nephews out snorkeling. Like that would be like a dream moment for me, you know. 3 of them, they're all like within a year and a half of each other, so they're going to be an absolute rat pack when they're like teenagers.
You're the definition of the cool uncle.
It's going to be sick, yeah. So I've got a younger brother, and then my brother-in-law has 2 younger brothers, and so they're the younger boys are 25, twins, and Alex, my little brother's 27. They're called the Yunkles, by the way.
Okay.
And they're like, what the fuck? Like, how we can't be cool uncles? Like, you know, what are we going to do? Take him to a football game or like beers and stuff? And I'm like, well, you're cool because you'll be close to his age. But they're like, you're swimming with fucking whales. I was like, oh, yeah, okay, that's fair. Yeah, all right, I'll be the cool uncle then.
I bet at Christmas they give you the t-shirts, just all the cool uncle memorabilia.
Yeah, it's funny, man. So
that's so good.
No, there'll definitely be some moments in the future that are going to be excellent as well. And I feel like then, you know, like right now I'm on sort of 20 years of experience in the water. By the time they start getting in, you know, probably going to be closer to 30, 35 years. So I should have some pretty epic contacts and epic, maybe by then I might be running something for myself, who knows. But I feel like here as well, like I'm learning a lot about running a business and seeing how freaking hard it is as well. And like, you know, you need to be kind of bankrolled. Like I don't have any capital was another big one for me. So it's eye-opening in some ways, very, very good learning experience in others. But yeah, I think it's a good little stage of life right now. So.
Nice, awesome. And it seems like what you've got out of this last however long, building this dream life and continuing to kind of form it, all sorts of ups and downs, what you're landing on more than ever is knowledge of like thyself, as the Delphic Oracle might say, you know.
No, 100%.
How to set those boundaries, trusting your intuition. Are there any, for anyone who might listen to this, for certainly a future version of me, is there anything, any mistakes, regrets, like things or mindsets or actions you could have done that would have expedited this process? Or, and obviously for your journey, every step of the way was important. But for the next person, is there anything that you can give them? Like?
No, absolutely. I think that's very wise. Like, yeah, I've gone a bit, I would say a little bit haphazardly through my journey. Now, life will sometimes do that to you anyway, but I think more for things like if you find yourself maybe by like your mid to late 20s, you're probably getting a little bit more funneled into the direction that your passion is taking you. Like, what do I truly want to do? Like, what fires me up, you know? Like, I knew I was like, the water is where I want to head. And the only thing it's not even a regret, it's just like, it could have happened earlier in some regards, was like looking at like qualifications and experience that would have been more useful to you. So like, if you're on the water, if you're on boats, go and do some driving qualifications. If you're in the water, like whack out your qualifications as like as an instructor or as a diver, like get things on board. Medical qualifications, like learn to fix engines, like pick up experience that you might feel out your depth initially, but it's going to pay off in the future. Even if you feel like, oh, like I don't know if I should be doing these ones, like you know, like I've fixed a lot of the stuff. Like you could put it down as an experience, but you don't have like that little line of like, you know, qualified Yamaha technician or something, you know.
Even though you can probably fix that engine better than the new graduate.
Than someone who's actually done the course, yeah. So like, if you've got experience, get something to kind of like become qualitative over it so that it'll get you a job, basically. Like, also as well, learn to see when people are taking from you more than they're giving. See if the balance is there. I had far too many times where I was give, and people would take, and not giving back, you know, like that could be on a friendship basis, it could be on a professional basis. Just be aware of your own energy output versus what you're getting back, you know. Are you getting a reward for it? Whether that's intrinsic or financial or whatever. So
I think a lot of that, I think what I see people struggle with that one is that, let's just say in a employer setting, to stand up and recognize, okay, maybe there's a bit more take than give. It's like, to a certain degree, who am I to say, especially if I don't have that experience, right? This might just be the way of the world. But B, it's like, well, do I have the faith to actually say no and get out of this relationship, this friendship, this employer status? Do I have the faith that there's going to be another one, a better one on the horizon? Like when you quit the place in Northern Tonga, you didn't know that this was there waiting for you, right? You had faith in the fact because you believe in that so much, but
you also like, sometimes you got to just keep trying. It sounds a bit weird, but like there's points where I've been incredibly low, like dangerously low, I'd put that, particularly during like lockdowns and stuff. And I don't know, whatever it is, but there's just some part of you that just keeps like, just keep trying. Like it's out there, you know, like I know it's there. Like there's some weird, unwavering faith, not on a religious level, but like, you know, you've got the skills, you know that you work hard and you know you're good with people. And it's like, I just need the opportunity.
Yeah.
I need to find the right person to go, fuck me, you're pretty good. Like, yeah, come and have a crack at this. And all of a sudden you're in again. And I feel like here is like, I've kind of like found a niche that fits myself, fits for the employee and the employers, and hopefully, you know, fits for the guests as well, that it's like, it feels right being here. So
I think that's a great way to like summarize your story. I think that's the fundamental value, is like, you just got it, you're hammering, you know, and you're standing up for your dream.
Man. Like that's life's, what's that one again? It's you see all these memes and stuff, but there's one, it's that one from Matthew McConaughey. They're gonna try to tell you what you gotta do, but you gotta keep on living, man. LIVIN. And like this, some of the stuff that you'll get by just keep sort of pushing through those walls of like being tested, and you're like, oh, okay, I'll just stay here. It's like, nah, like there's better stuff out there, and you might have to kind of like move, but all of a sudden, like bang, you'll land on one, and you're like, that's the reward for like keeping going, I guess.
So I might just attempt to summarize that last little segment, because maybe in your early, mid, kind of the start of your 20s, you really like just explore, follow your dreams, just do crazy shit. But then once you start to hone in on that, back that, and make it easy on a future self by almost overqualifying yourself, so you don't need to get fucked over as much, and you don't need to have this like zigzag experience as much.
Yeah, exactly.
Particularly,
because that sort of like frenetic search as you get older becomes frustrating, because you know you're good enough to not have to do it. You want to find something that's a little bit more reliable, you know, like, and have a CV that someone's like, I'm going to offer you X amount, and you're like, all right, no, I'm going to go somewhere else.
But when you're just relying on that goodwill of like, no, you should know what I am capable of.
Exactly.
Okay,
so,
cool.
Be cautiously optimistic. Always look for the best, and don't expect the worst, but be prepared to make a new plan and adapt if stuff goes weird.
Yeah, that's cool. I very much, connect with that. I was calling myself the other day a hopeful romantic in all sorts of things.
No, I'd say it's the same. I get you on that one too.
I guess my last question is, and it probably has been touched on already, but I put it in your notes, like, to what entity, and for some it might be just some random inner voice, it might be a god in a book, it might be the ocean, do you feel like answerable to above all else? When you're in that dullest of dull moments, what is going to pull you out and make your soul sing the loudest? Like, what do you trust in the most?
That is an excellent way to sort of, try to pinpoint what like, I don't know, is like
what's the most real thing in existence for you?
It's really random. There's a movie called The World's Fastest Indian. It's Anthony Hopkins, and it's about a guy called Bert who set the land speed record on an Indian Scout motorcycle. It's very random. I know this sounds random, right? But he travels from Invercargill in southern New Zealand over to the States and took this homemade sort of bike and stuff to the Bonneville Salt Flats, right, to set these records. And there's a thing in this movie, and it's maybe a little cliche, but he's like, people are like, why do you do it? And he's like, because I've lived more in 10 seconds doing 260 miles an hour on a motorbike than some people live in their entire life. And for me, keeping searching, it could be these tiny moments. For example, like, you're in front of a whale that comes and spy hops like 10 feet in front of you, like me and you shared that crazy spy hop the other day, or like a whale breaches and then you're the only one in the water. Like, you're seeing and doing stuff that is like at the kind of things that if you wrote them down and you say them to people, they're like, there's no way that happened. And you're like, I fucking saw it. And sometimes, like, I saw it alone. It's like my moment. That's for me. So like you're saying about an entity, I think, to be honest, it's almost like nature, I'd say, more than anything else, the wild places, and particularly like the animals of the world, is really like what I would say I'm accountable for. Because it's almost they're going like, it feels like it's talking to me saying like, there's so much more out there. Like, don't fucking take your foot off the pedal. Like, just fucking keep going. Like, you haven't even, like in the South Pacific, I've like barely scratched the surface, and the stuff I've seen here has been some of the most incredible things I've seen in the water in my whole life. So it's like that, like the search, it's like, just keep going, you know, like I can't really describe it more than like there's a hunger for exploration of the natural world, but particularly the ocean, of course, because that's like my love. You know, like new species. It's like I just want a list. I want to know. Like it's like I just want it to keep growing.
They dive a bit deeper for them.
Yeah. No, like you know, like of species that are recorded but that I haven't seen. That's something for me. Like if I see a new animal, I'm like a 5-year-old kid with my little book. Yeah. So, yeah, I'd say that really, like, if I'm exploring new lands, particularly new seas, seeing new reefs, new water environments, new and new animals, like that's like definitely my true alignment. Like that's what like keeps me feeling like I'm on the right path. So
Brilliant. Oh, I love it. And you're getting me G'd up. That was beautiful. Is there anything else you want to
oh no, man,
talk
just
about while you got a microphone on you?
I think I really like a passionate inquiry, the name of your podcast. When you asked me about this the other day on the boat, you initially said it, and I was like, oh, really quite stopped me in my tracks because I quite liked it, and I like the way that the title of it is applicable to anybody, because everyone has different passions and everyone has different interests, but like whether it's somebody who's cooking in a Michelin star restaurant in London or playing in the Philharmonic Orchestra, like that their passion is driving them to that place or to that point in sort of their standing in life. And it's interesting. I'm sure there's going to be principles that are like that will come and crop up. But
I'm looking forward to maybe at 100 episodes, seeing what were the common...
Yeah, absolutely. What's the common denominator? And I guess people that maybe, particularly if you're doing something that is very, very out there, or you're an outlier in like normal society, I think those principles are probably going to be even more like obvious, I guess, with those sorts of people. Climbers, like extreme people doing extreme sort of sports and activities and stuff, particularly, it's like this. Yeah, there's something about it that just you can't get unless you're out there doing it. So
I feel a bit of a responsibility personally, because again, I'm more than happy to live my own story, and I'll tell it to everyone who fucking bothers to listen. But I think it's so interesting other people's, and for whatever reason, currently running off some spirit, I have a real drive to give people and share other people's stories.
Yeah, cool, man.
I don't know. I just feel a lot of power in it, and
I really appreciate the invite, and
no, but thank you for
no worries
doing it, because it's very early there. Who knows? This might not compete with Joe Rogan, but we'll get close. So,
you can but try, man. You can but try. That's just the thing. You've got to get it out there. So
I hope hope we can get Rob on board, because I think he's very...
Oh man, as I said, if you can start cranking through some of those story gears, you'll get some absolute crackers come out.
Like. He's very... I think because I really have nothing to offer him in doing this, and he has plenty to... I don't know what he'd lose, but I think it'd be a good one. But thank you so much for that.
All good, man.
That was really cool.
Sick.
Awesome.
No worries, man.
Give me one of those. Alrighty. Oh no, I didn't. No.